Okay, so in the last few weeks, David Cameron has weighed into an ongoing debate surrounding Tottenham Hotspur about the use of the word yid in chants to describe fans of the club and players as well. This has prompted a response from David Baddiel saying that yid is a term of race, hate and abuse, and that it has no place at a modern day football club. Jazza is a genuine Tottenham fan, so it'll be interesting to hear what he thinks about this. Jazza, what's going on?
So I'm part of the Yid Army. I have been using that term before I knew it was even associated with Jewish people. For me, a Yid and a Yiddo and the Yid Army has nothing to do with the race of the people who used to go to the club or whatever. It's what we use to identify us as one side versus the other. It's we have a long history of very strong links with the Jewish community in North East London. Tottenham Hotspur does, and we used to get called Yids as a term of abuse, and then we decided to turn that into our identity. We became the Yid Army, and we were proud of the owners of the club and the people who were standing next to us in the stalls, and we used it and we turned it into a powerful and very proud identity.
So you think the term's been reappropriated then? That it doesn't mean...
I would say so, yeah.
So, Ali, what do you have to say to that?
I think I'd ask the question, because it's still... I think it's still used as an offensive, as a derogatory term, right? Mm-hmm. So does that worry you about the potential conflation of the two things, the positive term and the negative term?
Have you ever heard it used as an actual slur?
Honestly, to be completely honest,
never.
never.
Either of you.
I have never heard it used in a negative way, other than on the football field. Although, to be fair, I'm not Jewish, so I'm not going to be called a Yid.
But
yeah.
Ali, have you ever heard the word being used as an actual slur?
I have not, but
I don't know anyone who has, which I think is quite interesting. How do you respond to the point that the word has kind of moved on?
Well, the thing is, I'd want to talk to some Jewish people before
before you represent their views.
Well, exactly, because I until I was sort of 12 or 13, I honestly believed that racism was something in the past, just because I'd never sort of experienced it or been around it. So I think that just because it seems like the term has been reappropriated and yay and everything's fine, I think that we need to be really careful about just kind of casually using words, about how we use words. And
so when I'm
on
on the stands of White Hart Lane, and when granted it doesn't happen very often at the moment, but when I'm there and I am part of that crowd that is supporting our boys, we aren't chanting Yiddo, Yiddo as a way of insulting Jewish people. Mm. Our intention is not there. It is pride, and if we wanted to be offensive to the Jewish heritage of the club, then we would ignore it. To be completely honest, we took something that was used as a very negative slur against us when Jewish people got a lot more hate than they do these days, and we appropriated it to be something that we are proud of. And I think that's something that should be celebrated rather than
I guess the question is, what's the virtue of using a word that, when you can use pretty much any word to describe that group, what's the virtue of using
because that's the insult.
A word
that's
that
the insult that we were called.
History.
We were on the other side of the pitch. We would get called yids, 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 as if that was a bad thing. And now we say yids, yids, yids like a good thing. And that's my word that I use.
Because as far as I'm concerned, the way when you have these reappropriation of terms, the N-word, for example, to describe black people, is now kind of being reappropriated so that black people can describe each other in that way. But at the same time, I feel like this one is kind of a special case because you're not Jewish, and yet you feel comfortable using this term because of your identity with the
Yeah.
club, and that's why I feel like this is a different situation than sort of other terms. How do you respond to that?
I'm not sure what you're
So
asking.
are you trying to say that it makes it worse somehow because he's not himself Jewish?
Yes.
Okay.
In what way do you think that is the case?
Well, I think that because you haven't yourself kind of been wronged through this term, I think it's weird that you're comfortable.
But before I
using
even
it.
knew that it was an insult to that was thrown at Jewish people, I have been using this word. But for other reasons. That's like you using the word potato, and then all of a sudden you find out that the word potato is a bad word, and you can't use it anymore, and you're scrapping it out of your vocabulary.
Well, doesn't that happen? That happens all the time, though. I mean, like if you look at history.
No,
it's
part of my identity
in
as
the
a fan.
In the 19th century, coloured was the acceptable, racially appropriate term for.
But that's
people who weren't white.
If this word that I use is not a racial slur when I am using it. Somebody can be offended if they want to, but it's not their place to be. It's me being proud of the heritage of my club and the people that I stand with in the stands and the people who are playing on the pitch. That's what I'm thinking of, and why should I have to find another word to identify with?
Okay, well, what do you make of the argument that it allows other people to kind of mask their racism? Particularly fans from other clubs, say.
I think when other clubs are using it, I think there perhaps is still a certain amount of anti-Semitism, but when club members use it, when we call ourselves idiots and we've taken that and used it as a banner to stand behind, I think that we have turned that term on its head so that it no longer means, when somebody chucks the word yid at us, it's no longer a bad thing. And isn't that a positive? That we've taken an insult and turned it into something that we can identify with no matter what background we're from.
Well, I don't feel you've sort of really answered the question. And you think that certain fans, particularly non-Tottenham fans, are using the word in an anti-Semitic way, but you think your own fans are not, which I'd largely agree with. But what does that mean from a kind of the perspective that this is a problem that we should do something about?
So how would you feel if you were being called a puff?
I wouldn't mind, I suppose.
So
Maybe
I
that's
will
weird.
get called a yid, despite the fact that I'm Jewish, that I'm not Jewish. And so they aren't calling me a yid because I am of that ethnic background. They're calling me.
But it's not you that they're potentially attacking. It's Jewish people.
But when they
if you see what I mean.
when they throw that terminology at me, they're not attacking.
Right.
They're not attacking Jewish people. They're attacking the club that I'm supporting.
Yeah, which is associated with Jewish people. So you could argue that by using that name, that it does become a racial thing or a religious thing.
Do you think that is really what is going through people's head when they chant it on the stands?
I think potentially, and I think that you need to I don't understand what the virtue is of using the name Yid rather than, I don't know, whatever catchy name. Are there any other names that
Spurs would be the obvious one.
Spurs? Yeah.
No, but Spurs
understand.
is the name of the club. I'm not a Spur.
But could it not be argued that you could be a Spur if the club decided that
good
they're
luck
going
trying to completely change the identity of a club that's over 100 years old.
Yeah.
The thing is, since
it can't be changed, so don't even try.
Yeah, good luck trying to change the chants of a football team of tens of thousands of people every weekend.
I mean, if you could do that, would that be something that you would choose to do? If you could just replace Yid for Spur, is that something that you'd be interested in doing?
You're telling me that I can't use an identity that is my identity.
No, but what I'm saying is, if you could do that, if you could just click your fingers and that changed, is that a decision you'd make?
I don't think that's a hypothetical situation.
Yes, it's a hypothetical question.
Like, if I could click my fingers, I'd stop anybody being offended by things. I don't feel like I should feel bad for a word that I have appropriated as something. I don't think that Jewish people have the ownership of Yid as a word and as an identity.
We used to drink bottled gins and the whole world had to sing. Meet the Jews and unsuch fun. We used to dance, so take a chance. I lost my mind to young romance. Yeah, I don't mind, I got it back. Half the time I'm waiting for a second chance. Half the time